"This man we're going to see, he's a professional killer," I called to her across the garage floor. She called back, her voice echoing against concrete and steel. "From what I gather, he's one of our best. Isn't that a fun thought?" It took 30 minutes to get over to Hawkins' sister's house in Silver Springs, Maryland. Jean pulled her Volvo wagon up alongside a black Lincoln and talked to 2 agents inside the parked car. Suddenly, I saw a man come out of the sister's Cape Cod-style house. I recognized Kevin Hawkins from his file pictures. He must have seen us. He started to run. Then he hopped on a Harley-Davidson motorcycle parked in the driveway. I shouted, "Jean!" out my window, and I gunned my engine at the same time. Kevin Hawkins' motorcycle cut sharply sideways over the sliver of frost-covered lawn separating 2 split-level ranch houses. He raced onto the development road past the last row of houses. I followed close behind. I had my Glock out, and the window rolled down. I wasn't going to fire unless he did. Kevin Hawkins wasn't wanted for any specific crime yet. But why was he running? He sure was guilty about something. I watched Hawkins stretch himself flat over the handlebars of the bike. He knew how to ride. What else did the trained killer know how to do? Then up ahead, traffic. I realized what he was going to do. He was going to split the stopped traffic and keep on going. I started to brake and I cursed loudly. I kept my eyes pinned on the bouncing, speeding motorcycle. Suddenly, it went down. Hawkins was down on the road. He had swerved to avoid hitting some kids. Could this be Jack? If not, who in the name of God was he? I was out of the car, holding my Glock, racing like a madman toward the bizarre accident scene. Kevin Hawkins managed to pull himself up to his feet. He looked back. He had a gun out, but he didn't fire. He was only a few feet away from the kids. Instead, he ran to a black Camaro at the head of the line of stopped cars. I could see him yelling into the driver's side window of the stopped car. He fired directly into the open window. Jesus Christ! He'd shot the driver dead, just like that. The contract killer took off in the Camaro. He'd killed someone for his car, but he nearly killed himself to avoid hitting some innocent children. No rules, or rather, make up your own. Nana Mama was still up when I got home around 11:30 that night. Samson was with her. "What is it?" I asked.
"Someone's been calling on the telephone all night tonight, Alex. And they just hang up when I answer the phone. I could hear someone breathing,"
my grandmother said and sighed softly.
"I'm glad you're home now. This murderer stalking our neighborhood worries me so. It's very bad. Please trust my feelings on this one. Well, I'm going to bed now that you're both here."
She came and kissed me and then left the room. I knew what she was intimating, this evil incarnate following me home. No one in his right mind goes after a cop's family. I didn't believe the killer was in his right mind, though. I was almost speechless. For one time in my life, I felt violated, incredibly angry, and also afraid for my family. Maybe these phone calls were nothing, but I didn't know that for sure. "You think the Moores kid's the one who called here tonight?" Samson asked. "That would make sense," I told him. "He definitely wants special attention, wants to be seen as important, John. Maybe he knows I'm working Jack and Jill and he's angry at me for letting them steal the spotlight." Samson shrugged his broad shoulders. Just in case, a technician will be here first thing in the morning. Put a crackerjack hookup on your phone. We'll put a detective in here too, until we find the boy wonder anyway." I nodded. "That's good. Thanks for coming by and being here for Nana." Things had taken a turn for the worse. The monsters were at our doorstep. They knew where we lived. There were no rules now. Nobody, not even my family, was safe. I slept on the porch with a Glock in my lap. Home, sweet home. The 2 murder cases were beginning to feel like a single, relentless nightmare. It was Kafkaesque, and it was wearing down the entire Metro Police Force. I drove to the White House very early in the morning. The president had wanted to see all of us. President Burns personally greeted each member of the crisis team as we entered the Oval Office. What had happened, I wondered. Had Jack and Jill contacted the White House again? I glanced across the room at Jean Sterling. She shrugged her shoulders. When we were seated, President Burns spoke. He seemed in control of his emotions. which was quite a feat. What a royal pain in the butt this job can be. Believe me on that one. The president's intense blue eyes circled the room, stopping for a moment on each face. I've been thinking a great deal about this current unfortunate situation. Sally and I have talked about it late into the night, several nights in a row. This miserable three-ring circus has become a major distraction to the executive branch of our government. It's bad for the country, for our people, for everybody's mental health. It makes us look weak and unstable to the rest of the world. As a consequence, I've made a tough decision, which ultimately has to be mine to make. We simply have to return to business as usual at the White House. The United States can't be held hostage to real or imagined dangers or threats. That's the decision I'm making, and it goes into effect at the end of today. There was uneasy movement in the room. The president went on. I fully understand that this makes all your jobs more difficult, to say the least. I'm sorry, but there will be no further debate on the subject. I've also decided to make my scheduled visit to New York City on Thursday. I wish the best to all of us in our appointed tasks. You do your jobs, please. I'll try to do mine. We will have absolutely no regrets, no matter what happens from this point on. Is that understood? Everyone in the room nodded yes. Every eye was intensely focused on the president. Absolutely no regrets. I was sure I'd remember that phrase for the rest of my life. Thomas Burns had just put his life on the line.
Another murdered child had been discovered in Garfield Park. A male. Less than an hour ago. John Sampson got the news at around 7 o'clock in the evening. He couldn't believe it. He wanted Sumner Moore bad, and he wanted him now. Sampson parked on 6th Street and began the short walk into the desolate and dreary park. He pushed his way inside a circle of police uniforms. He moved in closer to the body. The victim was clearly older than either Vernon Wheatley or Chanel Green. Sumner Moore had graduated from murdering very small children. The boy's mouth and nose were wrapped with silver duct tape. Sampson asked the medical examiner how long he'd been dead. "Maybe 36 hours," she answered. "I'll know more after the autopsy. The boy took a brutal beating." Sampson forced himself to move around to the other side of the boy's body. He could see his face now. He could see it, but he couldn't believe it. The murdered boy was Sumner Moore.
Nothing ever begins at the time we believe it does. Still, this is what I think of as the beginning. It was Monday afternoon, 9 days before Christmas. I spent some time with Damon and then with Nana. Then I drove out to Andrews Airfield, where Air Force One was being prepared. President Burns was going to New York City, and I was going with him. No regrets. There have been many conflicting accounts, but this is what happened and how it happened. I know because I was there. That evening, we landed in a light rain at LaGuardia Airport. The president was keeping his commitment to speak in New York the following morning. It had been decided to go from LaGuardia into Manhattan by car rather than helicopter. The president wasn't hiding anymore. Don Hamerman, Jay Greer, and I climbed into a Lincoln Town car directly behind the president's. There were Secret Service men, FBI agents, and New York City policemen milling around everywhere. I had learned that the NYPD would have a minimum of 5,000 officers on the Special Service detail for the length of the president's visit. National Security Advisor Don Hamerman spoke as soon as we were moving. "No one has seen Kevin Hawkins in the past 3 days. He seems to have fallen off the face of the earth." His voice was full of frustration and anger. "I think Kevin Hawkins is definitely involved somehow," I said. "He's a loose cannon suspected of a homicide inside the CIA. He's extremely right-wing. He strongly believes in the importance of intelligence for our national defense. President Burns doesn't. That could explain the Jack and Jill scenario. Hawkins is experienced and resourceful enough to pull off an assassination. He'd be very hard to stop. But something's bothering me about him," I went on. "According to everything I've read, he's a loner and seems to have problems relating to women. I don't see Hawkins suddenly working with a woman." We were starting to cross the 59th Street Bridge into Manhattan. New York looked amazingly huge and imposing, capable of swallowing us whole. Anything can happen here, I was thinking, and I'm sure Don Hamerman and Jay Grayer were too.
The photojournalist had arrived early on Monday, December 16th, for his work in New York. Kevin Hawkins had occasional flashes, mind photos of memorabilia he studied on the JFK killing and the murders of Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, even the badly botched shooting of Ronald Reagan. He knew one thing for certain. This particular assassination wouldn't be botched. This was a done deal. There was no way out for Thomas Burns. He was closing in on the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, where he knew the president and his wife would be staying. It was typical for this president to go against the advice of his security advisers. Don't listen to the experts, he thought. Arrogant fool, useless bastard, traitor to the American people. Kevin Hawkins joined in with a noisy, festive crowd. He didn't want to be around here too late, but the presidential motorcade was running behind the schedule he had, the schedule he had been given. Finally, he could hear the roar of cars coming up Park Avenue. The motorcade stopped at the hotel's canopied entrance. Then Kevin Hawkins almost couldn't believe what he was seeing. The arrogant bastard had chosen to walk inside from the street rather than use the underground garage. He wanted to show that Thomas Burns wasn't afraid of Jack and Jill. The Secret Service team smoothly and expertly got the president safely inside the hotel. They were very good, Hawkins thought, but not good enough. Not for what he had in mind. Hawkins watched the rest of the shiny blue and black sedans unload. Finally, he saw Jill. She looked so cool and utterly unconcerned. Then she disappeared inside the Waldorf with the rest of them. The photojournalist sauntered away down Park Avenue. The assassination is as good as done, he thought. It was guaranteed. But what Kevin Hawkins didn't even suspect was that he, too, was being watched. Jack was watching Kevin Hawkins stroll down Park Avenue. After he had watched Kevin Hawkins disappear, Sam Harrison left the crowded area near the Waldorf. There was something he had to do now, no matter what the risks. At the corner of Lexington and 47th, he stopped at a payphone booth. As he dialed, he thought about how Jack and Jill was heading toward its climax. He was confident that the real truth would go to his grave with him. It had to be like that. The real truth had always been far too dangerous for the public to know. He finally reached a number in Maryland. A little girl's voice came on the phone. Immediately he felt the most incredible relief, but also a joy he hadn't experienced in days. He was in a safety zone. He was home. His little girl was what really counted for him now. "It's Daddy," he said to his youngest child. "Hello, Pumpkin Eater. I miss you to bits. Where's Mommy?" he asked. "I'll be home real soon." "Do you miss me?" "I sure miss you." He had to get away with this, he thought, as he talked to his daughter and then his wife. He couldn't go home in a body bag as the worst American traitor since Benedict Arnold. No, the body bag was for President Thomas Burns. He deserved to die. So had all the others. They were all traitors in their own way. And soon, very soon, it would be finished.
Something was clearly wrong at the hotel. We hadn't been at the Waldorf for more than a few minutes when I knew there was a serious breach in security. Jay Grayer beckoned with his hand. "I don't know how they managed it, but a delivery of flowers came about 10 minutes ago. They're from our friends Jack and Jill. There's another rhyme with the flowers." The note was next to an arrangement of blood-red roses. I read it as Grayer looked over my shoulder. "Jack and Jill went up the hill and surprised the chief with flowers. We're here in town, we're counting down your last remaining hours." "They definitely know what they're doing," I said, "and we definitely don't."
It was time to prove he was better than Jack and Jill. No contest. The cross house stood in dark, shifting shadow.